Linda, General, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Leader, all of the distinguished public officials and others that are here, I am exceedingly impressed by the turnout and the tremendous amount of interest that you have in what is going on in Iran, Iraq, and with the people that we are so concerned about. There's a lot to discuss, but let me begin by focusing on the most serious part of this. What you see to your right is just one example of the slaughter that has gone on inside Iraq. That just happened on September 1st, 2013. 52 Camp Ashraf residents were massacred without any warning. Military officials came in and killed 52 people, injured hundreds and hundreds of people. Those are the faces of the human beings who were destroyed that day. That's not the only attack that has taken place in Iraq. If I have it correct, under the Maliki regime, there have been at least 6 attacks, 3 on Ashraf, 3 on Liberty. And you say to yourself, how can this happen in this day and age? How can this possibly happen? Remember, every single one of these people, every single person that you see there on that wall who was slaughtered, who was massacred, had a letter of protection from our government. They were all given a promise of protection by the United States of America. And every single one of them was slaughtered despite that. If we fail to be outraged by it, if the Obama administration fails to be outraged by it, if we as citizens fail to be outraged by it, we have lost our honor. We no longer are a country of honor. We're no longer a country that can be respected. This is a group, and we'll discuss it over the course of the next period of time in more detail. This is a group that is in opposition to the mullahs, to the religious theocracy of Iran. They believe that that government should be overthrown. They believe it should be replaced with a government, and Madam Rajavi, who is the president-elect, outlined those principles very, very well. They believe that that government should be replaced with a government that is freely elected, a government that guarantees basic human rights, a government that allows for freedom of religion, a secular government, a government that allows respect and dignity for women. In fact, this organization is run by a woman, and I've worked with this organization for 5 or 6 years now at great length, and many of the significant positions in this organization are held by women. This is an organization that practices what it preaches. It would be so wonderful for the Middle East if an organization like this was able to play a substantial role in government. What a great example for the rest of the Middle East. This is what they stand for. They opposed the Shah. They believed in, a long time ago, they believed and hoped that a government like I just described would replace the Shah, a secular democracy. That was hijacked by first Ayatollah Khomeini, now Khamenei. We know what happened, the hostages taken, thousands and thousands and thousands, into the hundreds of thousands of people executed. You saw that in the 70s and the 80s. You saw that on television. You saw the streets of Iran running with blood. That was being done by the people who run Iran today. One of those people that held hostages, that held our American hostages, one of those terrorists that held American hostages, this moderate Iranian regime wanted to send to the United Nations as its UN ambassador, Abu Talabi. Can you imagine that? This man also participated in the assassination of a member of this organization in Rome in about 1993. Over the last number of years, the organization worked hard to try to overthrow the government of Iran, to try to overthrow the theocracy. There were many ups, many downs, And then came the Iraq War. And a group of these patriots were at Camp Ashraf in Iraq. Now the United States was there, and they were promised protection by the United States government. And the United States government has completely reneged and broken that promise, as have the United Nations. Now you ask yourself, well, why is Iraq allowing this to happen? Why is Iraq, at least 6 times in the last several years, entering Ashraf and Liberty and slaughtering these people? Why are they doing that? Do they just not like them? They're doing it because Iraq, and this would be very hard for the administration to accept this, because it shows that President Obama and Vice President Biden have somehow been able to grasp out of the jaws of victory defeat. They were handed in Iraq, in which the surge under the Bush administration and under General Petraeus was working. And what has Iraq become? I hate to say this, because we've sacrificed so much in Iraq. What has Iraq become? Iraq has become a client state of Iran. And if Iran wants some of these people killed, which it does periodically, then Iraq, on its own or with the help of Iranian agents, invades Ashraf or Liberty and kills them. And why is it getting worse now? And this gets us to the negotiations over a nuclear Iran, which is so important for the world, not just for the people in that region. The Obama administration likes to present the narrative, and much of the media does, of an Iran that has become somewhat moderate. Rouhani is a moderate, and he is seeking peace, and he is seeking an Iran that will not have nuclear weapons. Now, first of all, you should know, because it isn't reported adequately in the United States, that according to Amnesty International, more people have been killed in Iran under Rouhani than under his predecessor. They're going through a killing spree inside Iran. Last year, they killed over 700 people. This year, they've slaughtered over 200 people. That's inside Iran. So why are they slaughtering people inside Iran? Why are they doing that? Let me read you this. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Iran, Ahmed Shahid, pointed to a sharply rising number of executions, reporting that at least 687 had been executed in Iran in 2013. Among them, 28 women. 2/3 of the hangings were carried out under Rouhani's watch. This year, the preliminary report shows at least another 200 murders. And then Iranians, according to the UN report, continue to be arbitrarily detained for peacefully exercising their fundamental rights to expression, association, assembly, belief, and religion in ever-increasing numbers. So here's what we have. We have an Iran that is presenting a picture to the world, to the American media, to the Obama administration, of moderation. Rouhani is a moderate, whatever that means. But they don't want the people of Iran to ever really get the notion that they are going to be moderate. Because you know what happens when a dictatorship starts to liberalize. What happens when a dictatorship starts to liberalize? Then all those forces that desire freedom come forward and bring it down. And if these people are anything, they're smart and they're shrewd. So to the world, they present moderation. To the interior of Iran, they present oppression, murder, slaughter, repression, and horror, to frighten the hell out of them so that they will do nothing to rise up and have another green movement like they had a few years ago. That's one reason why Rouhani the moderate is Rouhani the mass murderer inside Iran. To the world, the moderate, inside Iran, a mass murderer. We did it before in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. Rouhani, the moderate, has actually in his memoirs bragged about the fact that they did a very good job of fooling us, that they were actually not enriching uranium when in various remote parts of Iran and 2 specific sites they were continuing to enrich uranium. He brags about it in his book, that he treated us exactly like this before. However, on 2 occasions, once in 2003 and then in 2005, they were caught red-handed. They were caught cheating, and they were exposed to the world. Who caught them? The MEK caught them. They were exposed by representatives of the MEK inside Iran who put their lives at risk, some of whom lost their lives in order to do this, and they were exposed to the world as cheaters. This time, they want to make sure they eliminate the people who will be the ones who tell the United States, who tell the UN, who tell the world about what they're doing. They want to make sure they eliminate as many of them as possible and frighten the rest of them into submission. That is the second reason why we have so many slaughters going on right now. That the way you win a negotiation, when you're negotiating with terrorists, dictators, murderers, immoral, amoral people, you have to have more strength than they have. You have to have more leverage than they have. There's no doubt that these sanctions drove Iran to the bargaining table. Remember, these sanctions were imposed on President Obama, many of them with President Obama kicking and screaming by the United States Congress. He now claims credit for them, but these are things he didn't want to do. He didn't want to be this tough. Well, these sanctions have driven him to the bargaining table. For 10 years, all of the opposition has been to Iran having any use of nuclear power. Why? Because they can't be trusted. Why? Because they're the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the world. Why? Because of all the governments in the world, currently, they're the ones who have killed the most Americans. Why? Because they support genocide in Syria. Why? Because they're dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. I have to have any more whys as to why they shouldn't have nuclear weapons? During the Cold War, the worst nightmare was if an insane person could get their hands on nuclear weapons. Well, they're insane. And if they're not insane, they're doing a hell of a good imitation of it. They should not be allowed to have any nuclear capacity at all, not one bit of nuclear capacity, because they can't be trusted. And by the way, why do they... And by the way, why do they need the peaceful use of nuclear power? They have oil. This isn't a country without energy sources. This isn't a country that needs nuclear power for peaceful purposes. So what can be done about this? What can we do about this? I believe there are several things that can be done, and the United States has to organize itself to impose this on the president, much the way Ted Cruz and Senator Schumer stopped Obama from allowing Abu Talabi to come to the United Nations by standing up. When and if an agreement is presented to the United States Congress, the United States Congress should make certain demands if it's going to agree to any agreement. Demand number one is the agreement should be prefaced with a statement of American policy that we are going to continue, whatever this agreement says, to seek regime change in Iran. Just think about this. We were in favor of regime change in Egypt when the leadership of Egypt was friendly to the United States. We were in favor of regime change in Libya when the leadership of Libya was basically neutered. He had given up all his weapons of mass destruction. We're in favor of regime change in Syria, we just don't seem to know what to do about it. We're in a state of confusion about it. Well, the regime in Iran is worse than the regime in any one of those three countries. Worse than the regime was in Egypt, worse than Libya, and worse than even Syria. So why aren't we for regime change in Iran? And in Iran, we have a benefit that we don't have in those other places. Right now, if we're in favor of regime change in Syria, we don't know who to replace the regime with. Here, we know who we're going to get. We know at least in part who we're going to get. We're going to get Madam Rajavi. We're going to get the people who stand for these principles of a constitution, democracy, a rule of law, women being allowed in government, a non-nuclear Iran. We know what we're going to get. We should insist that any agreement say that Iran can have no nuclear capacity of any kind. None. That Iran must release its political prisoners. And that Iran has to allow, very complete, very intense, and very open inspections so that we can be sure that they're living up to the agreement. And this is why we're here, because we want people educated about this, we want people to know this, and most importantly, we have to rise up and we have to redeem the honor of our country. And we have to demand that these people who have been left behind, these people who were promised protection, these people who have so far lost so many people, so many killed, that these people are immediately given refuge in the United States of America. And I don't want to be ashamed of my country. If we make a promise, then we should keep our promise. We shouldn't be afraid to keep our promise once again because we may be offending murderous dictators. So I conclude, as I always do, because I know this is going to be played in Camp Liberty at some point in the next few days. And I want to say a special word to the people in Camp Liberty. You and I are deeply involved in this, and I hope many of you become deeply involved in it, but our lives are not at risk, theirs are. And when the history of Iran is written, and when Iran becomes a free and democratic country, as it will become, I don't know when, it could be sooner, it could be later, it could be much sooner than we think. That's happened before in these situations. It could be somewhat later than we think. But Iran will become a free country. Then it will become a free country based on the blood, the sweat, and the tears of the people of Camp Liberty and the people of Camp Ashraf. It's their courage that is making this possible. And we are with you as if we were there with you. We are never going to abandon you. And one way or another, we are getting you out of there. Thank you, and God bless you.